Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the enemy fleet fill the sky above. Kepler 4 for 2b. The Zephyrian ships looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh. They moved in ways that made her stomach turn. These were not normal ships. They were alive. The communication screen flickered to life. A face appeared that belonged to no species Lisa had ever seen before. The creature had 6 eyes and skin that looked like wet stone. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal. "You will surrender now," the creature said. "Your world belongs to the Zephyrian Empire. We have come to take what is ours." Lisa looked at her tactical officer. Commander Jake Sullivan shook his head. The numbers on his screen told the whole story. The Viridian Defense Force had 47 ships. The enemy had over 300. Each enemy ship was twice the size of their largest vessel. "This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the Viridian Republic," she said into the communicator. "This system is under the protection of the Galactic Peace Treaty. You have no right to be here." The creature's 6 eyes blinked in what might have been amusement. "Treaties mean nothing to the strong. You are weak. We are strong. That is the only law that matters." The communication ended. Lisa turned to her crew. These men and women had served with her for 5 years. They had protected their world from pirates and raiders. But this was different. This was an invasion by an empire that had conquered 12 systems in the past year. "All ships, prepare for battle," Lisa said into her command channel. "We fight for our home. We fight for our families. We fight because we have no choice." The first wave of enemy ships came down from orbit like falling stars. But these stars brought death. The Zephyrian weapons were unlike anything the Viridians had faced. Green energy beams that passed through their shields like they were not there. Missiles that changed direction in mid-flight and found their targets no matter how the ships moved. Lisa's ship, the Starlight, shook as enemy fire hit the hull. The lights flickered. Smoke began to fill the bridge. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper, fired back with everything they had. The blue energy beams from their guns hit the enemy ships, but seemed to do little damage. The alien vessels absorbed the energy and kept coming. "Captain, the enemy ships are healing themselves," Dan said. His voice was tight with fear. "Every time we hit them, they repair the damage in seconds." Lisa watched through the main viewer as one of her ships, the Morning Star, exploded in a ball of fire. 36 people died in that moment. Good people. People with families waiting for them at home. "All ships fall back to defensive positions around the planet," Lisa ordered. "Form up with the orbital defense stations." But the retreat did not help. The enemy ships followed them down. The Zephyrians had weapons that could reach the surface from orbit. Green beams of death lanced down from the sky. Cities that had stood for centuries vanished in moments. The capital city of New Haven, with its crystal towers and floating gardens, became a crater of molten glass. On the surface, Commander Jake Sullivan led the ground defense. He had trained for this day his whole life. But training could not prepare him for enemies that fell from the sky in pods that looked like giant seeds. When these pods opened, creatures emerged that were half machine and half something else. They moved like liquid metal, but struck like hammers. Jake's soldiers fought bravely. They used every weapon they had, but the enemy soldiers could not be stopped by normal bullets. They absorbed energy weapons like sponges. When one was finally destroyed, 2 more took its place. "Fall back to the mountain strongholds," Jake ordered his troops. "We cannot hold the cities, but we can make them pay for every meter of ground." In space, Lisa watched her fleet die, ship by ship. The Zephyrians did not just destroy their enemies. They played with them. They would damage a ship just enough to cripple it, then move on to the next target. They wanted the Viridians to suffer. The enemy commander appeared on her screen again. This time, more of the creature was visible. It sat on a throne made of what looked like living bone. Around it, other creatures worked at stations that pulsed with organic light. "Your resistance is amusing," the commander said, "but it is time to end this game. Surrender now, and we will allow 10% of your population to live as slaves." Lisa looked around her bridge. Half her crew was dead or wounded. The ship was falling apart around them, but she was not ready to give up. None of them were. "You want this world? Come and take it." The enemy commander's 6 eyes narrowed. "Very well, we will take it, and we will make you watch as we destroy everything you love." The final battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, only 5 Viridian ships remained. The orbital defense stations were gone. The major cities were ruins. Millions of people were dead or fleeing into the mountains. Lisa's ship limped back to the underground command center that had been built deep in the planet's core. The Viridian government had retreated there when the invasion began. President Helen Davis met them at the docking bay. Her face was gray with exhaustion and grief. "How many?" she asked. 42 ships lost," Lisa reported. "Maybe 3 million civilian casualties. The enemy controls 60% of the planet's surface." Helen nodded. She had expected this. The Zephyrian Empire had never been defeated. They had conquered species that were stronger than the Viridians. They had weapons that could destroy entire fleets. They had armies that could overrun any defense. "There is one option left," Helen said. "The quantum communicator." Lisa knew what she meant. Deep in the command center was a device that could send messages across the galaxy instantly. It used technology that the Viridians did not fully understand. They had found it in ruins left by an ancient civilization. "The humans," Helen continued. "We have heard stories, tales from traders and refugees. They say there is a species called humans who live on a world called Earth. They say these humans have never lost a war." Lisa had heard the stories too. Most people thought they were myths, tales told by spacers who had drunk too much. But what if they were true? What if somewhere in the galaxy there was a species that could help them? "Even if the stories are true," Lisa said, "why would they help us? We have nothing to offer them." Helen walked to the communicator. It was a device the size of a small building. Strange symbols covered its surface. When activated, it hummed with power that made the air itself vibrate. "Because," Helen said, "the stories also say that humans have a weakness they cannot ignore. A call for help." The message was simple. It contained the location of their world, the nature of their enemy, and a single request. "Help us." The message shot out across the galaxy at speeds that bent reality itself. It passed through star systems, where the Zephyrians had already conquered. It moved through space where other species cowered in fear. It traveled for 3 days before reaching a star system at the edge of the galaxy. The system was called Sol. The third planet was covered in blue oceans and white clouds. This was Earth. This was where the humans lived. Admiral Kate Harrison was on duty at the Deep Space Monitoring Station when the message arrived. She had been in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years. She had fought pirates and raiders. She had defended Earth from 3 different alien invasions. She had never seen anything like this message. The transmission was not just words, it contained images. Video of the invasion, records of the battle, pictures of the destroyed cities, and through it all, the same simple request. "Help us." Kate called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. The most powerful people in human space gathered in the war room deep below the surface of Luna Base. They watched the recordings from Kepler 4-4 to be in silence. "This is not our fight," said General Bob Martinez. "These people are on the other side of the galaxy. We have our own problems to worry about." "Look at those images," said Admiral Susan Wright. "Look at what these Zephyrians did to civilian populations. This is genocide." "The Viridians are not human," General Martinez replied. "We have a duty to protect our own people first." Kate Harrison stood up. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. But when she spoke, everyone listened. "I have read the reports about the Zephyrian Empire," she said. "They have conquered 12 systems in the past year. They are moving toward this part of the galaxy. Sooner or later, they will reach us." She turned to face the council. "We can fight them here, when they are at full strength. Or we can fight them there, when they are still growing. But we will fight them. The only question is, when?" The vote was close. 7 in favor, 5 against. But it was enough. "Prepare the fleet," Kate ordered. "We are going to war." The human fleet came out of hyperspace like thunder. Admiral Kate Harrison stood on the bridge of her flagship, the USS Determination, and watched the enemy positions on the tactical display. The Zephyrians had spread their forces across the KEPLER 442b system like a disease. Their bioships floated in orbit above the planet, feeding on the energy of the star itself. "Contact Captain Rodriguez," Kate ordered. "Tell him to begin reconnaissance." Captain Alex Rodriguez commanded the destroyer, USS Relentless. His ship was fast and quiet, designed for gathering information about enemy forces. He took his ship close to the planet's largest moon, where the Zephyrians had built some kind of monitoring station. "What do you see, Alex?" Kate asked over the communication channel. "They have bioships everywhere," Alex replied. "The things are huge. Some of them are over 3 kilometers long. They look like they are growing rather than being built." Kate nodded. She had read the reports from the Viridian survivors. The Zephyrian technology was organic. Their ships were alive. Their weapons were living things that could adapt and change during battle. "Any sign of the surviving Viridian forces?" she asked. "Picking up transmissions from the mountain regions," Alex said. "Looks like they are still fighting down there. The enemy has not been able to root them out completely." Kate turned to her communications officer. "Get me Commander Parker. Tell her to establish contact with the Viridian Resistance." Commander Beth Parker was in charge of alien liaison operations. She had learned 17 different alien languages and had worked with dozens of species, but she had never dealt with a situation like this. "This is Commander Parker of the Earth Defense Force," she said over the emergency frequency. "We are responding to your request for assistance." The reply came from deep underground. The voice was tired, but filled with hope. "This is Commander Jake Sullivan of the Viridian Defense Force. We cannot believe you actually came." "We always come when someone asks for help," Beth replied. "What is your current situation?" "We hold about 30% of the planet's surface," Jake said. "Mostly mountain regions and underground facilities. The enemy controls the major cities and all orbital space. We have maybe 50,000 military personnel left, and about 2 million civilians in the safe zones." Kate listened to the report with growing anger. The Zephyrians had not just conquered this world, they had terrorized it. The report spoke of entire populations being used as slaves, or worse. Children taken from their parents. Cities destroyed just to make a point. "Time to announce our presence," Kate said. She opened a channel to the entire system. "This is Admiral Kate Harrison of the Earth Defense Force. We are here in response to the request for assistance from the Viridian Republic. Any forces in this system have exactly 1 hour to withdraw or face the consequences." The reply came quickly. The same six-eyed creature that had spoken to Captain Morgan appeared on the screen. But this time, it looked curious rather than amused. "So, the humans have finally revealed themselves," the creature said. "We have heard stories about your species. Most of them are quite entertaining." "I am War Prime Nexroth of the Zephyrian Empire," the creature continued. "This system now belongs to us. You have no authority here." Kate studied the alien commander. It sat on its throne of living bone, surrounded by biotechnology that pulsed with its own heartbeat. Everything about the Zephyrians was designed to create fear and disgust in other species. "Your hour starts now," Kate said, and closed the channel. War Prime. Vexroth turned to his tactical officer. How many ships do they have? 47 vessels. War Prime, the officer replied. Similar numbers to the Viridian fleet we destroyed. And what is their technology level? Primitive by our standards. Metal ships with chemical propulsion. Energy weapons that appear to be simple laser arrays. No biotechnology at all. That Troth made a sound that might have been laughter. Deploy the standard assault formation. We will destroy them quickly and then resume our conquest. The first engagement took place above the planet's largest moon. Captain Ryan Kelly commanded the human cruiser USS Thunderbolt. His ship was 300 meters long and carried enough firepower to level a city, but it looked tiny compared to the Zephyrian bioship that moved to intercept it. All stations. Battle alert, Ryan ordered. Weapons free. Target the center of that thing. The human weapons opened fire. Red laser beams and particle streams struck the alien ship. But instead of explosions, the bioship seemed to absorb the energy. Its hull rippled like water, and the damage healed itself in seconds. Sir, our weapons are having minimal effect, his tactical officer reported. Then we try something else, Ryan said. He turned to his weapons officer. Load kinetic penetrators. Full spread. The kinetic penetrators were simple weapons, metal rods fired at tremendous speed. They carried no explosive warheads, just mass and velocity. When they struck the bioship, they punched through its hull, like bullets through flesh. The alien ship shuddered. Green fluid leaked from the holes in its hull. For the first time, it showed signs of real damage. It cannot heal mechanical damage as quickly as energy damage, Ryan observed. All ships switched to kinetic weapons. The engagement lasted only minutes. The Zephyrian bioship tried to ram the human cruiser, but Ryan was ready for this. He had studied the alien tactics. He knew they relied on fear and overwhelming force, but humans had fought wars for thousands of years. They understood violence in ways that few species could match. The bioship died hard. It screamed as it died, a sound that came across all frequencies. Other bioships nearby seemed to react to this death. They moved differently, more cautiously. War Prime Vexroth watched the battle from his command ship. He had never seen a bioship destroyed so quickly. The humans fought with a precision that was disturbing. They did not waste energy on impressive displays of power. Every shot had a purpose. Deploy the second wave, he ordered. Full assault formation. But the second wave met the same fate as the first. The humans had learned from the initial engagement. They came in small groups, using their speed and maneuverability to avoid the bioship's main weapons. They struck, fast and hard, then withdrew before the enemy could respond. Captain Danny Wright commanded the stealth destroyer, USS Shadow. His ship was designed for covert operations. It could become nearly invisible to most sensors. He used this ability to strike at the bioships from unexpected angles. Target their command nodes, he ordered his crew. Those organic control centers are their weak points. The Shadow's weapons were designed for precision strikes. Instead of trying to destroy entire bioships, Danny targeted specific systems. Navigation, weapons, communications. He did not need to kill the ships. He just needed to blind them. On the surface, the Zephyrian ground forces were receiving new orders. Their biomechanical soldiers began moving toward the human landing sites, but these orders were becoming confused. The communication network was breaking down as the humans systematically destroyed the command nodes. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster led the first human ground assault. She had studied the reports from the Viridian resistance. The enemy soldiers were tough and adaptable, but they relied heavily on coordination from their bioships in orbit. Stay together, she ordered her troops. Use concentrated fire. Do not let them adapt to our weapons. The human soldiers carried weapons that the Zephyrians had never encountered. Explosive rounds that detonated inside the target. Acid bullets that ate through sonic weapons that disrupted the neural links between the biomechanical soldiers and their controllers. The battle was savage. The Zephyrian soldiers fought with desperate fury, but the humans fought with something else. They fought with a cold, calculated violence that seemed to anticipate every move the enemy made. Amy met with Commander Jake Sullivan in a bunker carved into the side of a mountain. The Viridian officer looked like he had not slept in weeks. His uniform was torn and dirty, but his eyes were bright with hope. "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do you fight them so easily?" Amy checked her weapon and looked out at the battlefield. "We have been fighting wars since before we could build cities. We understand violence. We understand how to hurt things and how to break things. Most species fight to defend themselves. We fight to destroy our enemies completely." Jake nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand why the humans were feared across the galaxy. They did not just win battles. They erased their enemies from existence. In orbit, Admiral Kate Harrison was planning the next phase of the operation. The Zephyrian fleet was still larger than her own, but they were confused and disorganized. Their bioships were powerful, but they were not designed to fight an enemy that understood their weaknesses. "Order all ships to form up for the main assault," she commanded. "We are going to end this quickly." The human fleet moved toward the Zephyrian positions like a pack of wolves. Each ship knew its role. Each captain understood the plan. They had trained for this kind of battle their entire careers. Warprime Vexroth watched them approach. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of defeat. The humans moved with a confidence that spoke of countless victories. They fought like they had never lost a war. "Prepare for full engagement," he ordered. "All ships, attack formation." The bioships moved to intercept the human fleet. But as they approached, something unexpected happened. The humans did not engage them directly. Instead, they split into smaller groups and began attacking the Zephyrian supply lines. The bioships needed constant feeding. They absorbed energy from stars, minerals from planets, and organic matter from conquered populations. The humans began systematically destroying these feeding stations. "They are not trying to destroy us," Vexroth realized. "They are trying to starve us." It was a strategy that no enemy had ever used before. Most species fought for territory or resources. The humans were fighting to eliminate the Zephyrian ability to make war. The battle raged for 2 days. When it ended, the Zephyrian fleet was scattered and broken. Half their bioships were dead or dying. The rest were fleeing deeper into space, but the humans were not finished. They had come to help the Viridians, and they would not leave until the job was done. The human fleet had been in the Kepler-4 to beat system for 1 week when Admiral Kate Harrison decided to change everything. The Zephyrians still controlled parts of the planet and had reinforcements coming from other systems. It was time to show them what humans could really do. Captain Danny Wright received his orders at midnight. His stealth destroyer, USS Shadow, was to penetrate deep into Zephyrian space and begin what the humans called disruption operations. Danny smiled when he read the mission brief. This was the kind of work he had trained for his entire career. "Take us into the enemy rear areas," he told his navigation officer. "Time to cut off their communications." The Shadow moved through space like a ghost. Its hull was covered in materials that absorbed sensor waves instead of reflecting them. Its engines ran so quietly that they were almost impossible to detect. The Zephyrians had no idea a human ship was moving through their territory. Danny's first target was a communication relay station orbiting a dead moon. The station was a living thing, like all Zephyrian technology. It pulsed with bioelectrical energy and was connected to the enemy fleet by organic neural links. "One shot," Danny told his weapons officer. "Make it count." The Shadow fired a single torpedo. But this was not an ordinary weapon. It was designed specifically to disrupt organic systems. When it struck the communication station, the bioelectrical network collapsed instantly. Dozens of Zephyrian ships suddenly found themselves cut off from their commanders. Danny did not wait to see the results. He was already moving toward the next target. Over the next 3 days, he destroyed 17 communication nodes. The Zephyr fleet began to fall apart as ships lost contact with their command structure. On the surface of Kepler 4-4, to be, Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster was working with Commander Jake Sullivan to plan the liberation of the major cities. The Zephyrian ground forces were strong, but they were designed to fight enemies who used similar tactics. They were not ready for human warfare. "Show me your standard assault formation," Amy said. Jake pulled up a holographic display. It showed Viridian soldiers advancing in neat lines, supported by energy weapons and shield generators. The formation was orderly and efficient. "This is how we have always fought," Jake said. "It worked against raiders and pirates." Amy studied the display and shook her head. "This is why you lost. You fight like you are in a parade. We fight like we are in a slaughterhouse." She changed the display to show human tactics. Instead of neat lines, the soldiers moved in small groups. They used cover and concealment. They attacked from multiple directions at once. They did not try to look impressive. They tried to kill their enemies as quickly as possible. "War is not about honor," Amy explained. "It is about making the other side die for their cause, while you live for yours." The first test of these new tactics came at the city of Crystal Falls. The Zephyrians had turned the once beautiful city into a fortress. Biomechanical soldiers patrolled the streets while organic sensors watched for any sign of resistance. Amy led a combined force of human and Viridian soldiers toward the city at dawn. But instead of attacking the main defenses, they struck at the power stations that fed the biomechanical soldiers. Without power, the enemy soldiers began to slow down and eventually stopped moving entirely. They are not really alive, Amy realized. They are machines that look like living things. The liberation of Crystal Falls took 6 hours. When it was over, the Zephyrian garrison was completely destroyed. More importantly, the human and Viridian forces had learned to fight together. The Viridians provided local knowledge, while the humans provided tactics that actually worked. In space, Admiral Kate Harrison was planning something that no enemy of the Zephyrians had ever attempted. She was going to attack their home base in this system, a massive bioship that served as War Prime Vexroth's command center. "That thing is over 5 kilometers long," Captain Alex Rodriguez warned. "It probably has more firepower than our entire fleet." "Size is not everything," Kate replied. "The bigger they are, the harder they fall." She called a meeting of all her ship commanders. These were experienced officers who had fought in dozens of battles. They understood that the Admiral was about to ask them to do something extremely dangerous. "We are going to board that command ship," Kate announced. "We are going to take it from the inside." The room was silent for a moment. Then Captain Ryan Kelly laughed. "You want us to board a bioship? Those things are like giant organisms. They can seal off damaged sections and flood others with poison gas." "That is exactly why we are going to do it," Kate said. "They will never expect it. No one has ever tried to board a bioship before." The plan was simple, but insane. A small force of human marines would use assault pods to penetrate the bioship's hull. Once inside, they would fight their way to the command center and capture or kill War Prime Dexroth. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Johnson was chosen to lead the boarding party. He was a specialist in psychological warfare, and Kate had a particular mission for him. "I want you to broadcast everything," she told him. "Every corridor you fight through, every enemy you kill, every step you take toward their command center. I want every Zephyrian in this system to see it." Steve nodded. He understood. This was not just about capturing one ship. It was about destroying the enemy's will to fight. The assault began at dawn. The human fleet created a massive distraction, attacking Zephyrian positions throughout the system. While the enemy was responding to these attacks, the assault pods, launched from the USS Determination. The pods were small, fast, and nearly impossible to detect. They struck the bioship's hull like bullets, hitting flesh. The organic armor tried to heal around them, but the pods had rotating drill bits that cut through the biomaterial faster than it could regenerate. Steve was in the first pod to penetrate the ship's interior. He found himself in a corridor that looked like the inside of a giant throat. The walls pulsed with a heartbeat-like rhythm. The air smelled of decay and something else he could not identify. "Cameras on," he ordered. "Time to give them a show." The broadcast went out across all Zephyrian communication channels. For the first time, the enemy soldiers could see humans fighting in their most secure position. Steve and his Marines moved through the bioship like a virus through a bloodstream. The Zephyrian defenders were not prepared for close-quarters combat. Their biomechanical soldiers were designed for open battlefield warfare, in the narrow corridors of their own ship. They were clumsy and slow. The human Marines, on the other hand, had trained for exactly this kind of fighting. They used shotguns and flamethrowers, weapons that were devastatingly effective in confined spaces. They threw grenades that filled the corridors with shrapnel and poison gas. "This is not warfare," one Zephyrian officer said as he watched the broadcast. "This is butchery." But that was exactly the point. The humans were not just fighting to win. They were fighting to terrify their enemies. Every shot fired, every enemy killed, every advance toward the command center was a message to the Zeverian Empire. Steve and his team fought their way through 17 levels of the bioship. They encountered defenses that no human had ever seen before. Corridors that tried to digest them like stomach acid. Walls that sprouted weapons and began firing automatically. Rooms that filled with narcotic gas designed to put enemies to sleep. But the humans adapted to each challenge. They wore sealed suits that protected them from the bioship's internal atmosphere. They carried sensors that could detect hidden weapons. They moved with a speed and precision that the bioship's defenses could not match. The final battle took place in the command center itself. Warprime Vexroth waited on his throne of living bone, surrounded by his most elite guards. These were not biomechanical soldiers, but actual Zephyrian warriors, trained from birth for combat. So the humans finally revealed their true nature. Vexroth said, as Steve entered the chamber. "You are not peacekeepers. You are predators." Steve raised his weapon. "We are whatever we need to be to protect innocent people." The battle was brief, but intense. The Zephyrian warriors fought with desperate courage, but they were facing humans who had been bred for war across thousands of years. When the fighting ended, Warprime Vexroth was dead, and his command center was in human hands. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Across the Zephyrian fleet, commanders began to panic. Their supreme leader was dead. Their most powerful ship had been captured by a force that seemed to fight without fear or mercy. But the humans were not finished. Captain Nicole Davis, commanding the heavy cruiser USS Invincible, led the next phase of the operation. While the enemy was still reeling from the loss of their command ship, she attacked their supply convoy. The Zephyrian bioships needed constant feeding. They consumed vast quantities of organic matter and energy. The supply ships that fed them were lightly defended because no enemy had ever targeted them before. Nicole's attack was swift and thorough. She did not try to capture the supply ships. She destroyed them completely, leaving the bioships to slowly starve in space. "Target their fuel depots next," Admiral Kate Harrison ordered. "Then their repair facilities, then their food production centers. I want them to understand that we are not here to fight a war. We are here to end one." The systematic destruction of the Zephyrian infrastructure continued for 3 days. The human fleet moved through the system like a harvesting machine, cutting down everything that allowed the enemy to function. They did not just defeat the Zephyrians, they erased their ability to fight. On the surface, the liberation of the major cities was proceeding ahead of schedule. The Zephyrian ground forces, cut off from their orbital support, began to collapse. Some units surrendered. Others fled into the wilderness. A few fought to the death, but they were quickly overwhelmed. Commander Jake Sullivan stood in the ruins of the capital city, New Haven, and watched human engineers working to restore the power grid. The crystal towers that had been destroyed in the initial invasion were being rebuilt with human technology. "How do you do it?" he asked Amy Foster. "How do you fight so effectively?" Amy looked at the city around them. Smoke was still rising from some of the buildings. The streets were littered with the wreckage of biomechanical soldiers. But already, civilians were beginning to return to their homes. "We do not fight to win," she said. "We fight to ensure that our enemies can never threaten anyone again. There is a difference." Jake nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand why the humans were both feared and respected across the galaxy. They did not just win wars. They ended them so completely that the enemy could never recover. In orbit, Admiral Kate Harrison received a message from Earth. The High Command was pleased with the operation's progress, but they had new orders for her. "Prepare for the next phase," the message said. "Intelligence indicates that the Zephyrian Empire is mobilizing their main fleet. They are coming to retake this system. Show them why that is a mistake." Kate smiled. She had been hoping for this. The Zephyrians had made this personal when they attacked innocent civilians. Now she would show them the full power of human warfare. The war was about to become much more interesting. The Zephyrian main fleet arrived in the Kepler-4 for 2B system like a plague of locusts. Over 600 bioships dropped out of hyperspace, their organic hulls pulsing with malevolent life. At their head was the Empire's greatest weapon, a bioship so massive it had its own gravity field. Admiral Kate Harrison stood on the bridge of the USS Determination and watched the enemy fleet take formation. Any normal commander would have been terrified. Kate was calculating. "Communications, open a channel to all ships," she ordered. "It is time to implement the doctrine of absolute victory." The doctrine of absolute victory was a human military concept that other species found disturbing. It meant that winning the battle was not enough. The enemy had to be destroyed so completely that they could never threaten anyone again, Captain. Peter Collins received his orders aboard the heavy bomber USS Devastator. His mission was simple but unprecedented. He was to destroy not just the Zephyrian military forces, but their entire ability to make war. "Target their shipyards first." Kate's voice came through the communication system. "Then their training facilities. Then their resource extraction operations. I want them to understand that we are not here to fight a war. We are here to end their capacity for violence." Peter's bomber group moved toward the edge of the system, where the Zephyrians had built massive organic shipyards. These facilities grew new bioships like trees growing fruit. They had been untouched by war for centuries because no enemy had ever penetrated this deep into Zephyrian space. The bombers approached in complete silence. Their stealth systems made them invisible to Zephyrian sensors. Their weapons were designed for maximum destruction, with minimum detection. By the time the enemy realized they were under attack, it was too late. The first shipyard died in a ball of nuclear fire. The explosion was so bright, it could be seen from the planet's surface. But this was not random destruction. Peter's bombers had studied the target for weeks. They knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage. The shipyard's bioneural network collapsed instantly. The partially grown bioships withered and died like flowers in winter. The facility that had taken decades to grow was destroyed in minutes. "Moving to target 2, Peter reported. "This is almost too easy." But ease was the point. The humans had learned from studying the Zephyrian Empire. They understood that the enemy's strength came from their ability to grow new ships faster than they could be destroyed. Remove that ability, and the Empire would collapse. On the surface of Kepler-44 to be calmed, Commander Linda Thompson was conducting a different kind of warfare. She was the chief of human intelligence operations, and her job was to understand the enemy so completely that she could predict their moves before they made them. "Bring in the next prisoner," she told her assistant. The Zephyrian officer was a mid-level commander who had been captured during the liberation of Crystal Falls. Like all his species, he had 6 eyes and skin that looked like wet stone. But Linda had learned to read Zephyrian body language. She could see the fear in his posture. "Tell me about your command structure," she said. The officer remained silent. Zephyrians were trained to resist interrogation. They believed that capture was worse than death. "I am not going to torture you," Linda said. "I am going to explain to you why your empire is doomed." She activated a holographic display that showed the current tactical situation. The Zephyrian main fleet was spread across the system, but they were operating without coordination. Their communication network had been systematically destroyed. "You fight like animals," Linda continued. "You rely on instinct and brutality. But war is not about being the strongest. It is about being the smartest." She changed the display to show human fleet movements. The Zephyrian officer's eyes widened as he saw the pattern. The humans were not just attacking randomly. They were cutting off escape routes, eliminating supply lines, and forcing the enemy fleet into a carefully prepared trap. "Your commanders are making exactly the moves we predicted they would make," Linda said. "We have been studying your species for months. We know how you think. We know how you will react to pressure. We know you better than you know yourselves." The officer began to shake. This was worse than any torture. To know that your enemies could predict your every move was a terror beyond description. "I will tell you what you want to know," he whispered. In space, Captain Marcus Brown was leading the attack on the Zephyrian flagship. His dreadnought, the USS Retribution, was the most powerful ship in the human fleet. But instead of engaging in a direct battle, he was implementing a strategy that no enemy had ever used against the Zephyrians. "All ships form isolation pattern," he ordered. "We are going to cut them off from everything." The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves surrounding their prey. Instead of attacking the massive bioship directly, they began destroying everything around it. Supply ships, escort vessels, communication relays. They turned the flagship into an island in a sea of empty space. The Zephyrian flagship was over 10 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet, but it was also alive, and like all living things, it needed to eat. The humans began systematically destroying its food sources. "They are trying to starve us," the flagship's captain reported to his superiors. "This is not a standard battle tactic." But the humans were not fighting a standard battle. They were fighting to eliminate the Zephyrian Empire's ability to threaten anyone ever again. Every move they made was calculated to achieve that goal. "Commander." Jeff Mitchell was conducting psychological warfare on a scale never before attempted. His broadcasts were reaching every Zephyrian ship in the system and beyond. He was showing them the systematic destruction of their empire. "This is what happens when you threaten innocent people," his voice carried across the communication channels. "This is what happens when you choose war over peace." The broadcasts showed the destroyed shipyards, the captured command ships, the fleeing survivors. But they also showed something else. They showed human mercy toward civilians, human protection of non-combatants, human efforts to rebuild what the Zephyrians had destroyed. "We are not monsters," Jeff continued. "We are teachers. And today's lesson is about the price of aggression." The psychological impact was devastating. Across the Zephyrian fleet, morale began to collapse. Ships that had fought bravely for the Empire began to surrender or flee. The sight of their most powerful weapons being systematically neutralized broke their will to fight. On the ground, Colonel Mary Adams was leading the final liberation of the major cities. Her forces moved with a precision that the Zephyrians had never encountered. They minimized civilian casualties while maximizing military effectiveness. "Surround the enemy positions," she ordered. "Do not let them escape, but give them a chance to surrender." The human approach to urban warfare was unlike anything the Zephyrians had seen. Instead of destroying everything in their path, the humans used surgical strikes that removed only military targets. They protected hospitals, schools, and civilian shelters while eliminating enemy strongholds. The Zephyrian ground forces, already demoralized by the loss of their orbital support, began to surrender in large numbers. They had been told that humans were savage beasts who showed no mercy. Instead, they found disciplined soldiers who followed strict rules of engagement. "Why do you fight this way?" a captured Zephyrian asked Mary. "You could kill us all and be done with it." Mary looked at the alien soldier. Even in defeat, he was trying to understand his enemies. "Because we are not here to commit genocide. We are here to end a war. There is a difference." The final battle took place in the space around the Zephyrian flagship. War Prime Cthulhu, the supreme commander of the invasion force, had barricaded himself in his command ship and was preparing for a last stand. "All ships, final assault," Admiral Kate Harrison ordered. "But remember, we want prisoners. We want survivors to carry the message back to their empire." The human fleet moved in. Perfect coordination. Each ship knew its role. Each captain understood the larger strategy. They were not just fighting to win a battle. They were fighting to end a war. The Zephyrian flagship fought desperately. Its bioweapons lashed out in all directions, trying to damage as many human ships as possible. But the humans had learned from their earlier encounters. They knew exactly how to counter each weapon, how to exploit each weakness. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the flagship was crippled and surrounded. War Prime Cthulhu found himself facing Admiral Kate Harrison across a conference table in the ship's command center. "You have destroyed my fleet," he said. "But the Empire will send more ships. We will never stop fighting." Kate studied the alien commander. His 6 eyes were filled with hatred and defiance. His skin had taken on a darker color, which intelligence, reports, said indicated extreme stress in his species. "No," she said quietly, "you will stop fighting. Because after today, you will not have anything left to fight with." She activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the Zephyrian Empire. The images were devastating. Shipyards destroyed, supply lines cut, command centers captured, military academies reduced to rubble. "We did not just defeat your fleet," Kate continued. "We have eliminated your ability to build new fleets. We have destroyed your infrastructure. We have captured your commanders and learned your secrets." The display showed more images. Human ships moving through Zephyrian space, systematically dismantling every military installation they could find. This was not just a battle. This was the complete destruction of the Empire's war machine. "You wanted to fight humans," Kate said. "Now you know what that means. We do not just win wars. We end them so completely that they can never be fought again." War Prime Cthulhu stared at the display in horror. His empire, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was being systematically erased. Not just defeated, but eliminated as a threat. "What do you want?" he asked. Kate smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "We want you to go home. We want you to tell your people what happened here. We want them to understand that there are consequences for threatening innocent people." She stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the remains of the Zephyrian fleet. Most of the bioships were dead or dying. The few survivors were fleeing toward the edge of the system. "You came here to conquer," Kate said. "Instead, you have learned why humanity is feared across the galaxy. We do not seek war. But when war is forced upon us, we fight to ensure it never happens again." The systematic dismantling of the Zephyrian Empire continued for another week. Human ships moved through their territory like surgeons removing a cancer. Every military installation was destroyed or captured. Every weapon was catalogued and neutralized. Every commander was either killed or forced to surrender. When it was over, the Zephyrian Empire no longer existed as a military threat. They had been reduced to a collection of isolated worlds, with no ability to project power beyond their own systems. The humans had not just won a war. They had eliminated the possibility of future wars. They had shown the galaxy what happened when someone made the mistake of threatening innocent people. But they were not finished yet. The final phase of the operation was about to begin. The final battle was not fought with weapons. It was fought with words. Admiral Kate Harrison sat across from the surviving Zephyrian leadership in the rebuilt capital city of New Haven. The conference room had been constructed from human and Viridian materials, a symbol of cooperation between species. The Zephyrians sat on one side of the table, their 6 eyes reflecting defeat and confusion. "You have a choice," Kate said to the assembled alien commanders. "You can accept our terms, or you can face complete extinction." The terms were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Zephyrian Empire would be dismantled completely. Every military ship would be destroyed or converted to civilian use. Every weapon would be surrendered. Every military officer would be retrained for peaceful professions. "This is impossible," said War Prime Nexus, the highest-ranking Zephyrian officer to survive the campaign. "You are asking us to abandon everything we are." "No," Kate replied. "We are asking you to become something better." Captain Sam Robinson, the human diplomat who had negotiated with dozens of hostile species, stepped forward. His job was to make the terms clear and unavoidable. "Your empire conquered 12 star systems," he said. "You enslaved billions of sentient beings. You committed genocide on 6 different worlds. These crimes require payment. The reparations were massive. The Zephyrians would have to provide compensation to every species they had wronged. They would have to rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. They would have to care for the refugees they had created." "You want us to bankrupt ourselves?" another Zephyrian officer protested. "You already did that when you chose war over peace," Sam replied. "We are simply making the cost visible." But the most shocking term was yet to come. The Zephyrian Empire would have to publicly acknowledge their defeat. They would have to broadcast across the galaxy an admission of their crimes and a formal apology to every species they had harmed. "This is humiliation," War Prime Nexus said. "No warrior species has ever been forced to do such a thing." Kate stood up and walked to the window. Outside, human engineers were working alongside Viridian civilians to repair the damage from the invasion. Children played in the streets while their parents rebuilt their homes. This was what peace looked like. "Humiliation is temporary," she said. "Death is permanent. Choose." The debate continued for 3 days. The Zephyrians argued and threatened and pleaded, but the humans had made their position clear. These were not negotiations. These were the terms of surrender. Commander Tony Phillips oversaw the dismantling of the Zephyrian military. His teams moved through their space like accountants, cataloging every weapon, every ship, every piece of military equipment. Nothing was overlooked. Nothing was forgotten. "How many bioships did they have?" Kate asked during one of their daily briefings. 4,736, Tony replied. "We have destroyed or captured all of them. The remaining hulks are being converted into medical facilities and research stations." The transformation was total. Military academies became schools for civilian professions. Weapons factories became hospitals. Training grounds became parks. The Zephyrian war machine was being systematically converted into tools for peace. But the real change was happening in the minds of the Zephyrian people. For centuries, they had been taught that strength came from conquest. Now they were learning that true strength came from building rather than destroying. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of her new ship, the Starlight II, the original. Starlight had been destroyed in the first battle with the Zephyrians, but the humans had helped the Viridians build a replacement. This one was faster, stronger, and equipped with human technology. Contact from the outer system, her communications officer reported. It is a Zephyrian vessel requesting permission to enter. Lisa tensed. Even though the war was over, the sight of a Zephyrian ship still made her nervous. Too many memories of death and destruction. "Permission granted," she said. "But maintain weapons lock until we know their intentions." The Zephyrian ship was different from the bioships they had fought. This one was clean and geometric, built from metal and ceramic instead of living tissue. It carried no weapons. Its hull was painted with symbols that meant medical assistance in the universal trade language. "This is Captain Nex Morin of the Zephyrian Medical Corps," came the transmission. "We are responding to your request for assistance with the refugee crisis." Lisa smiled. The refugees were Zephyrians who had been displaced when their military bases were converted to civilian use. The Viridians had offered to help them find new homes, and the reformed Zephyrian government had sent medical teams to assist. "Welcome to Kepler 4 for 2B, Lisa replied. "Your help is greatly appreciated." This was the new reality. Former enemies working together to solve the problems that war had created. It was not perfect, but it was a beginning. On Earth, Admiral Kate Harrison stood before the Defense Council and delivered her final report on the Zephyrian campaign. The politicians and military leaders listened in silence as she described the systematic dismantling of an entire empire. "The Zephyrian military threat has been eliminated," she concluded. "They no longer possess the ability to wage war against any species. The galaxy is safer because of what we accomplished." "What about the cost?" asked General Bob Martinez. "We lost 17 ships and over 3,000 personnel." Kate nodded. The cost had been significant, but not compared to what would have happened if they had done nothing. The Zephyrians were moving toward this part of the galaxy. If we had not stopped them at Kepler 44 to be, we would have faced them at Earth, and they would have been much stronger. The Defense Council voted unanimously to approve her actions. The Zephyrian campaign would be studied in military academies for generations. It had demonstrated the effectiveness of the doctrine of absolute victory. But Kate was not thinking about military doctrine. She was thinking about the children playing in the streets of New Haven. They would grow up in a galaxy where the Zephyrian Empire was nothing more than a history lesson. In the former Zephyrian capital of Nexus Prime, something unprecedented was happening. War Prime, Vexroth, the commander who had led the invasion of Kepler 4 for 2B, was working in a rehabilitation center for war refugees. The human terms of surrender had been specific. Military officers would be retrained for civilian professions. They would work to repair the damage their wars had caused. They would learn to build instead of destroy. Vexroth was teaching former soldiers how to grow food instead of weapons. His students were refugees from the worlds his empire had conquered. They listened to his lessons about agriculture and sustainability. "Why do you do this?" asked a young refugee from the Centauri system. "You were our enemy." Vexroth looked at the seedling in his hands. It was a small thing, but it would grow into a tree that would provide food for many people. "Because the humans taught me something," he said. "They taught me that strength comes from creating, not destroying." The rehabilitation programs were working across former Zephyrian space. Military officers were becoming teachers, doctors, engineers, and farmers. The culture of war was slowly being replaced by a culture of peace. But the most important change was happening in the schools. Zephyrian children were learning new lessons. Instead of stories about glorious conquest, they heard stories about cooperation and mutual aid. Instead of learning to fight, they learned to build. Admiral Kate Harrison received regular reports about the progress of the reconstruction. The Zephyrian worlds were becoming productive members of the galactic community. Trade was replacing warfare. Diplomacy was replacing conquest. The galaxy is changing, she told her aide, Commander Beth Parker. Other species are seeing what we did to the Zephyrians. They are learning that aggression has consequences. The Zephyrian campaign had sent a message to every species in the galaxy. Humanity would respond to calls for help. They would fight to protect the innocent, and they would ensure that aggressors could never threaten anyone again. But the most important message was about the nature of victory itself. The humans had shown that winning a war was not enough. True victory meant creating a peace that would last. 5 years after the end of the Zephyrian campaign, representatives from across the galaxy gathered on Kepler 4b for the signing of the Galactic Peace Accords. The document established principles for resolving disputes without warfare. Captain Lisa Morgan, now promoted to Admiral, stood beside her human counterpart as they watched the ceremony. Dozens of species had sent representatives. Even former enemies were working together to build a better future. Did you ever think it would end like this? She asked Kate Harrison. Kate smiled as she watched a group of young Zephyrians presenting flowers to Viridian children. We did not come here to win a war, she said. We came here to end one. Mission accomplished. The Galactic Peace Accords were signed by representatives of 47 different species. The Zephyrians were among the first to sign, their representative reading a formal statement acknowledging their past crimes and promising to work for peace. But the real victory was not in the signing of documents. It was in the children playing together in the streets of New Haven. Viridian and Zephyrian children, former enemies now learning to be friends. The human fleet departed Kepler 442 beyond a bright morning when both suns were shining. The Viridians had offered them anything they wanted as payment for their help. The humans had refused all rewards. We did not come here for profit, Admiral Kate Harrison had said. We came because someone asked for help. That is what we do. As the human ships disappeared into hyperspace, they left behind something more valuable than any garrison or space station. They left behind hope. Hope that somewhere in the galaxy there was a species that would answer calls for help. Hope that aggression would always face consequences. Hope that peace was possible. The Zephyrian Empire was gone, but in its place was something better. A collection of worlds working together to build instead of destroy. A people who had learned that true strength came from cooperation, not conquest. And across the galaxy, other species took note. The humans had shown what was possible when someone chose to fight for peace instead of war. The lesson was simple but profound. When humans said they would help, they meant it. When they said they would fight, they meant it. And when they said they would create peace, they meant that too. The war was over. The peace had begun. And somewhere, in the galaxy, the next call for help was already being prepared. When it came, the humans would answer. They always did.